Greetings, mortals! I'm Warevo, and welcome to another episode of Retro Chaos. Since this is my first time officially recording a game to review on my new PC, I wanted to take a chance to celebrate by reviewing my first N64 game. I managed to narrow it down to two choices, but I couldn't make up my mind since both games are ones I really loved as a kid. So I decided to ask around on Discord, and the winner by unanimous vote, Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. In 1994, Lucasfilm publishing director Lucy Wilson wanted to inject some new life into the Star Wars franchise to build hype for the 1997 release of the special edition versions of the Star Wars original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. The result was a huge multimedia project involving author Steve Perry, LucasArts, and Bantam Books, dubbed Shadows of the Empire. The whole project centered around the April 1996 novel written by Steve Perry, and was soon followed by the 6-issue comic series written by John Wagner and the soundtrack composed by Joel McNeely and produced by Robert Townsend. Then, finally, in December, came the legendary video game for the Nintendo 64. Shadows of the Empire began development in 1994 and was originally intended to be one of the launch titles for the Nintendo 64, but feedback from a trade show led LucasArts to delay the game until December in order to fine-tune it. Development began so early in the N64's life, in fact, that the N64 itself was still in the development phase, and LucasArts had to program it on an SGI Onyx supercomputer with the very same setup that inspired the N64 itself. It should be noted that LucasArts senior artist John Knowles is the one who came up with the idea of setting the story between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, as no other story up to that point had done so yet. This game focuses on the renegade smuggler Dash Rendar and his droid companion Lebo as they aid the Rebel Alliance in their struggle against the Empire and crime syndicate Black Sun, led by their leader, the conniving Prince Sheezer. No, not Caesar, Sheezer, who makes his hatred for Darth Vader very clear in his first few cutscenes. It starts off with the iconic Battle of Hoth, where you blast your way through probe droids, AT-STs, and AT-ATs. The first level is a flight simulator with controls that are actually quite intuitive and easy to grasp if you're using the right controller. I say this because while this game was made for an N64, I'm playing on an emulator on my PC. Thus, I'm using an Xbox gamepad with a custom button layout. Took me a little bit to get used to, but once I did, I actually felt like I was playing a scene right out of The Empire Strikes Back. This is by far the best level in the game, in my opinion. Now, I know what you're thinking. If this is the best level in the game, does that mean the rest of the game sucks? Absolutely not, and shame on you for thinking that. This game is awesome. This level just happens to be the highest peak moment. And while the rest of the game has highs and lows, it doesn't ever reach this level of peak again. The next level takes you through Echo Base, and after getting used to the controls, you watch as the Millennium Falcon escapes before blasting your way back to your own ship, the Outrider. The first thing you notice as you immediately let yourself willingly succumb to Rambo syndrome is that Dash's blaster will always automatically home in on any enemies that are in front of you. With camera controls like this, that's incredibly helpful. That way you don't have to waste your time trying to pinpoint your enemies, even if it is kinda slow. Speaking of the camera, Shadows of the Empire has one of the most unique camera systems I've ever seen. The default camera angle is the standard third-person view, but there's also a top-down, cinematic, and first-person view. And I only briefly cycled through the camera angles before I realized something that made my blood boil. This game uses tank controls. And you all know how I feel about tank controls. Shadows of the Empire, however, is a little bit easier to excuse because, unlike games like The Phantom Menace or Death Trap Dungeon, this game's controls don't suck. Mostly. Now, I have to issue a quick disclaimer. If you're playing on a proper N64 controller, you won't have as much of a problem with the controls. I, however, am using an Xbox gamepad with an altered button layout, so it took me a bit longer to find some of the buttons. I did try playing on my USB N64 controller, but the button mapping is really weird, and I couldn't fix it no matter how hard I tried. Not even with my emulator settings. I do have to say, though, that even though the controls in this game are pretty well programmed for the most part, there are moments when it gets kinda janky. Nowhere in my playthrough is this more evident than in the golf spaceport level. Right here, I actually struggled to jump onto this tiny platform just so I could jump onto the Outrider to get this challenge point. Or this section right here, where I tried to jump onto this platform and ended up jumping over it. As you make your way through the game, you'll come across these little red and silver Rebel Alliance insignias. The red ones are extra lives, but the silver ones are called challenge points. You can find these challenge points scattered throughout each level. Some are more difficult to reach than others, encouraging you to take risks and explore when possible. If you manage to find all the challenge points in the game, you get the Lebo scanner, which I can't show you because I never unlocked it. But don't worry, it's really not much to write home about. Also keep your eyes out for these crates. When you destroy them, they'll sometimes have power-ups in them. As you explore Echo Base, you'll come across these cells filled with Wampas. You know that big monster from the movie that attacks Luke? Wampas are big and beefy. They strike like a hammer and can tank a lot of damage. Avoid them as much as possible. Before you can reach the Outrider, you first have to deal with the level boss, an ATST. This is where the manual aiming control comes in. One thing you can do is strafe back and forth and try to aim up when the walker's back is turned. The problem is that aiming using the L button is clunky, and I really don't have the patience for this. So let's grab this invincibility power-up and show them how we do things downtown. Yeah, this is where I realized that the auto-aim thing doesn't work on the bosses. Also, a quick side note here, aiming for the head deals way more damage than aiming for the legs. Keep that in mind. I need to talk about the power-ups too. In each level, you'll come across various health and weapons power-ups. You have a +5, a +20, and a full health power-up, seeker missiles, a pulse cannon, disruptors, even a jetpack. These power-ups are all over the place in some levels, though the disruptor only pops up maybe 3 or 4 times really late in the game, so keep those when you find them and save them for the boss. The Seekers, as the name suggests, automatically homes in on enemies, though it doesn't lock onto the bosses. That said, it still does a crap ton of damage to them. The next level drops you off in an asteroid field where you have to destroy 60 TIE fighters and 20 TIE bombers as you make your way to Ord Mantell to get information on Boba Fett. Keep your eyes out for the red asteroids, as those are your challenge points in this level, and there are 6 in total. I find it easiest to play this level in first person. It's easier for me to aim. Plus, first person view in a flying rail shooter like this is so much more satisfying. It makes me feel like I'm actually in a scene from one of the movies. When you finally get to Ord Mantell, you have to jump across hover trains to make your way to the junkyard, or rather, crash your way into the junkyard, where you fight my favorite Star Wars character, IG-88. If you want to know why IG-88 is my favorite character, just read the book Star Wars Tales of the Bounty Hunters. There's a lot of really neat stuff in there. IG-88 is the first legitimately hard boss battle I'd ever faced. His aim is ridiculously accurate, so when you're not moving, shoot. And when you're not shooting, move. Spam those special weapons until you run out. They do a lot of damage. After beating IG-88, he tells you that Boba Fett is holed up in Gull Spaceport. This is the first time in the game where you actually get to use a jetpack, but you don't get it until halfway through the level. Also, the jetpack has limited fuel and does need to recharge. Fortunately, it doesn't take long to replenish your energy. The jetpack is a lot of fun, though the movement is a little wonky at times. Gull Spaceport is the only level in the game with a mini-boss, and the first mini-boss I'd ever seen in a game. Just hide behind the stairs and aim for the head. Also, be mindful of the challenge point they threw in right here. There are a lot of secrets hidden in this level, so make sure you look around everywhere. And once you get the jetpack, you're going to want to backtrack to earlier in the level to make sure you get things that you missed before. You then reach Boba Fett, who has two phases. First, you fight Boba Fett by himself, who uses his jetpack to stalk you all around the arena. Be sure to make use of that flamethrower power-up they gave you here, and give your own jetpack a good workout. Then you fight the Slave One, Boba Fett's ship, which is significantly tougher. So much so that I had to bail momentarily to regroup and gather some health before finally beating him. So you ground Boba Fett, who somehow still manages to get away with Han Solo to take him to Jabba the Hutt. Then you go to Tatooine, where you have to beat up a bunch of bikers who are out to kill Luke Skywalker. And this is arguably the hardest level in the game. But what kills it for me is the acceleration. You have two speeds in this level. Dead stop and 100 miles an hour. It makes it really difficult to control because you immediately go from 0 to 60 in a flash. So before you even know what's happening, you're already balls deep in a wall. Then again, what did I really expect in a game with tank controls? What you're supposed to do is ram the swoop jockeys into the walls to make them explode. If any of them reaches Luke, you lose. One thing I forgot to mention is that after each level ends, you get a little summary telling you how well you did. Or rather, how hard you sucked, just to rub it in your face. After that, you invade Imperial Freighter Saprosa, where after roaming around and flipping switches for 20 minutes, you find some disruptors and make short work of the level boss, a reprogrammed and very angry binary load lifter. The disruptor takes it out in a single shot. The next level takes you to Coruscant, where you have to break into Caesar's palace. No, not Caesar's palace. I know, I already made that joke. Anyway, you end up going through the sewers where you fight Dianogas. You know, that thing from A New Hope that grabs Luke. As a kid, I was terrified of this level because the Dianogas scared me. I hated going through the water in this level because I didn't know how many there were. So imagine my horror when I reach the end of the level and see this waiting for me. The boss for this level is, you guessed it, a giant Dianoga. The whole fight is underwater, and yes, you do have to watch your air. But if you've made it this far onto the level, you've already figured that out. This boss wouldn't be too hard if not for that, but the tentacles can reach you even in the air. You have to go down far enough to shoot its eye, which is its weak spot, but you also have to shoot the tentacles before they kill you. All of this while making sure you don't run out of oxygen. Find whatever rhythm you're comfortable with and let them have it, then fly up and into the palace. Caesar's palace is absolutely massive, but still very straightforward. Most of the level takes place over a bottomless pit, which is why you have the jetpack, so make good use of it. You have to plant 3 bombs to sever the connection to the skyhook far above. But before you can get back to the Outrider, you have to fight Sheezer's Gladiator droid, which is a ruthless end boss who refuses to give up. This boss has 3 phases. First, you destroy his legs, then you destroy his torso, then his head. In all 3 phases, he has eye lasers that he shoots at you, and they do a lot of damage. He also has other weapons to throw at you, but fortunately they give you plenty of disruptors to make short work of him, as long as you save them up from the previous levels. After escaping the palace, you play through another space level before finally reaching the skyhook. The hardest part about this level is getting inside. You have to destroy all 4 turrets on the spires before you can get inside. The problem here is that they regenerate really fast, so the most efficient thing to do is use your missiles. But those take forever to reload, so be smart with them. Once you destroy all 4 turrets, you can finally fly inside the skyhook, blast away the shields, then attack the core. Destroy the core and race to the exit, only to be greeted with this. Turns out you didn't make it out in time, and you died. No, it's not because I died. This is actually the canon ending. If you collect all the challenge points and beat the game on medium, you get an extra cutscene showing that Dash and Lebo did survive, but aren't telling anyone because they want to lay low. Now, you probably noticed a distinct lack of any mention of cheat codes or save states. I know this game like the back of my hand. I don't need cheat codes. And I only saved state once, only to not need it. I didn't even bother trying the cheat code until after I'd already beat the game. Mainly because I didn't even remember it existed until after I'd already started writing the script. Also, I know it's impossible to pull off on my gamepad with the way I have my buttons mapped out. I do have an N64 controller, but the driver that came with it mapped the buttons out really weird, and I couldn't get the code to work no matter how I tried. Not even by changing the button layout in the settings. There's also a code that lets you take control of ATSTs and Wampas, and I was able to get that to work, but I'll talk about that one in a minute. Even if it did work, I have a bone to pick with this particular cheat code. Sure, it gives you full access to a full debug mode, which gives you access to all weapons, invincibility, teleporting, and even disabling collision detection. But there's one tiny problem. Follow me on this. Okay, here's how the main code works. And hopefully you have better luck on this than me. First, you have to start a new profile using the name Space Wampa Space Stompa. It's case sensitive, and you need to have 2 spaces between Wampa and Stompa. Make sure you have the difficulty set to medium. If you enter it correctly, you'll hear a Wampa noise. Then, once you're in the game, set your control scheme to traditional. Then pause and hold down at the same time all 4 C buttons, L, R, Z, and left. But wait, we're not done yet. While you're holding all of those down, pull the joystick halfway to the left and hold it there for 5 seconds. If you do it right, you should hear a noise. Then, while still holding all those buttons down, tilt the joystick to the right halfway and hold it for 5 seconds. Then to the left again, then to the right, then to the left again. If you do it right each time, you'll hear a noise. The last time you do it, you should see a message on screen. Now press L and R to open the debug menu and use up and down on the joystick to scroll through the options. Of everything in this game, the cheat code is ironically the one thing I have the biggest problem with. Never mind the fact that I can't get it to work at all on my emulator. I'm using RetroArch, by the way. Even as a kid playing this game on an actual console, I had a hard time pulling it off. I had to have my uncle do it for me the first few times. Alright, so I have to have my buddy Nick record this because I need two hands to show this to you guys. I'm using my Tommy USB N64 controller. Standard N64 controller layout. Here's how the code is supposed to work. On one hand, you have to hold down all four C buttons and the L button. Or that's R. With the other hand, you hold down L, Z, and I have to reconfigure my fingers for this, and left on the D-pad. Then you pull the joystick to the left halfway and hold it for 5 seconds. Now, once you've done that, if you've done it correctly, as mentioned before, you should hear a sound. Then you push the D-pad halfway to the right for 5 seconds. Then repeat that process, left, right, left. This is way too much effort to put into a cheat code when the most you would have had to do, up, down, left, right, BA, start. Whatever happened to that? Where, with my Xbox gamepad, the way the buttons are mapped, these buttons right here are mapped to the right joystick, which obviously I can't push them all down at the same time because it's all one button. But if I could do it on this, it's a smaller surface area, so it would be a lot more manageable, especially with the joystick being right here. So not only do you need to use both hands on the controller the size of my head, but you have to enter the same code multiple times in succession after naming your game a very specific way and play on a very specific difficulty, then make sure you're using a very specific control scheme. Why did they have to do it like that? What was the point? Of all the things in this game, why did they have to screw up the cheat code? What were they thinking? Even with all that, I was able to get the enemy control cheat to work, though it did have a strange effect on my camera. For this one, without pausing the game, hold left, right C, and up. Then use the right C button to switch camera angles until your enemy is selected. Either the ATST in the Battle of Hoth level or the Wampa in the Escape from Echo base level. Control them with the D-pad and use the down button to attack. Holding right C, and up at Echo base will let you control a snowtrooper, though the snowtrooper is mind-numbingly slow and, in true stormtrooper fashion, can't hit the broadside of a barn unless you're right in front of it. You can also control the Wampas and Stormtroopers in the Gull Spaceport and Imperial Freighter Suprosa levels by entering the opposite codes. Either right C up for the Wampa, and left C up for the Stormtrooper. You can still fully control dash using the joystick, and you can go back to dash using the right C button, though the camera will still be messed up. And that's Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. You may have noticed I didn't say much about the plot of the game. That's because if I did, I'd be spoiling the novel for those who haven't read it yet. Yes, the novel, the comics, and the game all follow pretty much the same story, just told from different perspectives. Shadows of the Empire is one of the most memorable Star Wars games of all time, even being called, quote, the movie without a movie. This game made 1996 my favorite year and cemented my love of Star Wars. And to this day, Shadows of the Empire takes the #1 spot as my favorite piece of Star Wars lore of all time. Screw you, Disney! Shadows of the Empire will always be canon to me. I'm Warevo, thank you so much for joining me, and God bless.